My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hello there and welcome back to This Song Is Yours. I'm Simon Fink, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for episode 320. We're wrapping up our podcast episodes for the year this week with our good friends at Heaps Good Festival. They're taking the festival across our fair country this summer with shows in Adelaide and Melbourne, and they're also hosting a special set of shows in Brisbane at the Fortitude Music Hall with a lineup across 2 days consisting of guests such as the Avalanches, Griff, Holly Humberstone, Foals, and our guest today, Sbtrkt. Another festival favourite across Australia, having played so many of our festivals, Sbtrkt joins us today for another instalment of what we're dubbing Heaps Good Chats. We're going to chat to artists from the lineup about their own festival experiences. So whether that be the first music festival that they ever attended, dream ones that they'd love to play one day, or their own key music festival moments here in Australia, we'll be chatting to them and seeing what punters across the summer have in store. Today, Sbtrkt joins us on the podcast to talk about his first festival experience and the insane band that he got to see. I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but it is a live act that everyone wants to see once in their life, and he managed to at a very incredible stage. I'm not going to ruin the story, but it's definitely worth listening to. He also talks us through an experience at a festival over the last few years, which made him comfortable enough to lose the Sbtrkt mask and think about how he performs moving forward. We also talked to Sbtrkt about what Aussie fans can expect from Heaps Good in January. Tickets to both Heaps Good Festival and the special set of shows at the Fortitude Music Hall can be found in today's show notes. And we want to say a massive thank you to Mon and Layla from Scrabble BR for their help with today's episode. Now, before we embark on this conversation, please make sure you subscribe to This Song Is Yours on your preferred podcast platform. Stay tuned for all of our latest episodes by following us on social media. All details can be found within the show notes for today's episode. Let's get into it and have a heaps good chat with Sbtrkt. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Aaron Jerome, aka Sbtrkt. Aaron, hello, how you going?
Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it is an incredibly exciting time for a lot of Australian fans. Sbtrkt is coming back down to Australia for Heaps Good Festival in the new year, and we're going to have a chat about some kind of festival stuff today. So once again, thank you very much for kind of coming onto the podcast.
No, it's really great. I'm very hyped to be returning to Australia.
I know that it has been, I did a bit of a count today. I think it's been 8 years since we last saw you down here.
It really doesn't feel like 8 years have passed, but it obviously has, since I was last there. I performed at Listen Out Festival, I think was the last time around, back in, 2016 maybe, or 2015? I can't remember one of the two. And then, before that was like a live tour, was doing like my second album as well with Wonder Where We Land, doing like Falls Festival and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's exciting to return, It's always been one of my favourite places to play.
I was going to say you are a bit of a favourite at Australian festivals, as you've just kind of mentioned. You played Falls, you played Listen Out. I think my first interaction with you was at Laneway Festival.
Oh yeah,
I want to say back like around the first album.
No,
I think
absolutely, yeah. That was 2012. I think it was January 2012 or something like that. And I still remember that festival. It was such a great vibe, Like it was a real great group of people. There's a really interesting thing about it, actually, that in the time since, I didn't really know a lot of the other artists playing. Apart, we actually had a lot of people from my the label I used to be signed to were there. Like Jamie XX was there, and Sampha was obviously in my band at the time. And Chairlift were playing, Caroline Polacek, as now she goes by. But since that point, you know, I've worked with Toro y Moi, who was also playing that same festival that time, and I'd never met him at the festival, but you know, then he's been on my recent album. And also about a few years ago, I was working with Feist, and I didn't realize at the time she was the headliner back then, like of that festival. And then, you know, we did a few sessions in LA like a few years back. But yeah, we had this discussion. It's suddenly full circle. Realized, yeah, like there'd been this time when we done this sort of tour around Australia at the same time. So it's interesting kind of reconnecting with lots of people, seeing how kind of influential that festival had been, you know, with the lineup, to like the longevity of it for me anyway, you know.
I absolutely love that. From a number of the artists that we've spoken to, it does seem that, and this is not to, you know, toot one's own horn, Australia does seem to have a thing with festivals, especially with like touring festivals where you've got 4 or 5 shows together, where you're able to build these relationships and kind of have some fun. And it seems that a lot of collaborations end up, maybe a seed is planted somewhere in Australia by people just being able to hang out with one another to then
totally,
go and do something. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree. I think, you know, a common shared experience of somewhere new for everyone as well, plus also like kind of being, you know, kind of just being around and relaxing a bit more, being around, you know, kind of just there. We're like performing, plus also being able to meet other people. But yeah, just creatively in a different space. And I remember doing things like we did some radio shows on, I think it was FBI radio at the time and stuff, you know, like, and as well as like Triple J stuff. But I remember just doing these we're just doing like back-to-back DJ stuff, you know, kind of like low-key club things around it, which is really fun, you know. So like, I don't know, Australia's great for that, you know.
Look, we'll very much take that. We've got to do, like, we're so far away from everyone else. We've got to be able to offer something unique for a festival experience. I was wondering if you might be able to kind of take us back to your first ever festival experience as a punter, as going as a gig attendee.
Well, my one's kind of interesting. Like the first time I ever went to a festival was with my brother. And we went to this thing which is quite well renowned, you know, in the UK, but it was like the late 90s, and I was like kind of in my early teenage years basically, but like I was really fascinated by electronic music, and I pushed my brother to make us go to this event. It was called Tribal Gathering, and it was basically the first time that Daft Punk ever played in the UK, and also Ronnie Size's first ever show. So like I got to see, on this event, I saw so many people for the first time ever. And like the first time I'd ever seen kind of dance music, I'd never been to a club before at that point, you know. So the first time I saw it was in this mad festival environment with kind of, you know, like a happy hardcore tent, like a kind of, you know, US garage tent, and one which was just like, you know, kind of French house. There was like, I saw Chemical Brothers live, you know, like, I don't know, Carl Cox playing, all these mad, like crazy sort of legends of people. But yeah, seeing Daft Punk, you know, playing that event, I've never seen them since. It was the only time I ever saw them, was at this one thing. But it was incredible. It was one of those moments that like resonated with me and made me want to get involved and do that, you know, as my kind of occupation. Even though having no idea how to get there, I wanted to do it. But,
You've absolutely smashed out of the park. You haven't done things by halves in terms of first festival experience. Daft Punk is a pretty strong contender for like best headliner ever. Yeah.
No, exactly. And that was back in the day before their Mask robot phase as well. You know, it was kind of 1997, you know, when they were on their first album, Homework. So yeah, no, like I think, God, yeah, Ronnie Size was one of the things that really like, you know, I remember vividly as well, because it was his first ever show, and he had this whole like live band format where he had drums and like an upright bass player, but then he had like all his sequencers and kind of like his Atari ST, which was like the best sequencer at the time, I suppose, you know, for making beats and stuff. But like he had that on stage with all the computers rigged up and all this stuff, and I just was captivated by this idea of that electronic music could also be live and vice versa. You know, you could have both elements. It didn't just have to be playback of songs, you know. And that's what I saw with both Daft Punk. You know, they had years later I saw pictures of it, and it was just like they had racks and racks of gear. It was just like a studio basically on stage. And that stuff is like. And then Chemical Brothers are not dissimilar. They have like 30 keyboards or something, on their stage setup. Stuff like that definitely like has influenced me along the way, of going, not being shy of performing live, taking live stuff and messing about and just seeing what happens on the fly, not necessarily being like, oh, this has to be, kind of just a playback show. As a lot of electronic shows have become because LED screens and video and lighting has become so prevalent everywhere, you can kind of hide a bit, and that takes over. But I've always been of the school of like, performance should always be, for me, is an important part of it, that kind of like the live performance part.
100%. Do you remember, I guess, having seen those kind of bands and those elements and bringing it to your own project? Do you remember your first festival experience as Sbtrkt?
Yeah, like that was cool. Actually, I don't remember the first festival now because it's like sort of blended into one, a lot of these things. But like I was obviously DJing a lot as Sbtrkt to start with, so I was generally getting my feet playing at places in front of audiences, DJing, which kind of gave me more made me more comfortable with like being in front of people, and like understanding the different styles of like festivals there are, whether it's really electronic, whether it's like warehousey kind of thing, or it's like a more indie based thing, like your Glastonbury's, whatever, or something in America where at the time I started out, it was very EDM heavy, it was all like kind of Skrillex and, these people headlining stages, and it was just like mad lights and really loud brash stuff, and my stuff sounded really quiet and like kind of the opposite at the time, and I was like, how do I my live stuff started off on a very small scale. We were doing things to like, I remember going to play in Germany, in Berlin, and basically like me and Sam were there, and like 4 people showed up. 2 of them were Mode Selector, who just basically come to snoop on us to see what we were doing. But actually there was no one in the audience. So we kind of learned the hard way playing to no one, and then it kind of built fairly quickly, I suppose, to where there was an audience in front of us. But yeah, it kind of, you kind of learn. I managed to learn before I even got to like larger stages, like just being able to free myself of there being rules as such. One of the things I definitely wanted to do as Sbtrkt was break down like not being.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
Not being basically slave to other people, other musicians, because I wanted to make it fully live, but I didn't want it to be like, oh, I've got all these pro people on stage, so therefore I can sit back and just, plod along, pressing some buttons behind the scenes, when actually in the studio, all I do is create. I play synths, keys, drums, bass, everything, so like, and sequence and mix and engineer it. So like, then I'm like, why can I not do that on stage too? But it takes a bit more confidence to do it in front of an audience versus doing it on your own in, kind of a dark room, with no one there. But then translating that to where you've got, 20,000 people in front of you is like something you just got to like kind of start to get rid of the kind of the things in your mind that might put you off doing it, So for me, that was the barrier really of just being confident enough to go, look, I've got a new drum machine this week. I want to take it on stage and see what happens, So
I absolutely love that. I know that I think it was, and please correct me if I get any of this story wrong, I think it was a music festival in the last few years that has maybe changed your perspective on things, and it's why we've now got Sbtrkt unmasked, if you will. I think it was the Dialed In Festival that maybe made you kind of see things slightly different, and I was wondering if you could just talk about, I guess, the power of this festival and what happened to allow you to now, as we said at the start, you're both Sbtrkt and Aaron now.
Yeah. I think there's multiple levels. That was more, I think this festival was obviously like a point where it sort of validated me showing myself versus and that kind of representing who I am and what my music is. You know, it was basically a festival. It's in East London, and it's like, I think they're on their third year now, and it's not a massive thing. You know, it's like, I think they had like 5,000 people at the last one, which was quite large compared to the first one I went to. But like, it's predominantly like a South Asian electronic music festival, and my wife made me go to it. She was like, we need to go and investigate and see what's going on. So we went down, but like, I was just I suddenly felt like a thing of going, oh, look, there's other people around me. And now there's not so much a thing where you feel like you have to hide behind something to have validation. I didn't feel like there were any gatekeepers suddenly, you know, to why or who would listen to my music. And it was really interesting chatting to people there who had no idea that I was Sbtrkt. And it just became a thing where it's just like, wow, we had no idea. You've been so hidden for so long, you know, that it's just been a thing that there were a couple of people who did, but on the whole, it sort of became something where they like, I felt prouder about something. And I felt like there's something about, since I started creating music, a little bit of having a mask, especially in electronic music, became a bit of a caricature of something, you know, and it felt a little bit like, oh, this is a voiceless, kind of cartoony aspect to it versus it actually having sincerity and emotion to the music. So I was like partly feeling like through the years that, you know, the way things are in the world as well, I was just like, I don't feel like that's a necessary kind of visual prop I need anymore. In the beginning it made sense because it was like I wanted to focus on the music and not to be so like me having to present it to people or have to be the face of it to sell something, you know. And obviously in that time since social media took off and everything went the reverse way where it's like, yes, you are literally now here a vehicle to just like basically tell people about your music before the music's even heard, in a sense, you know. But in a way also it's given a strength to people having power to like autonomy over themselves, which before you needed like a certain label to like you or a certain radio DJ to play your songs or a certain like club person to be into it, you know. And I feel like some of that's broken down now. So having that ability to be able to like tell other people they can do what I did, you know, like do it with the freedom of just being yourself, you know, and not necessarily doing what I did, well, not doing what I did in the sense of having to hide to exist within the electronic space. Anyway.
100%. I do kind of love that, and I love that it, I guess that festival in that moment allowed, I guess, like that clarity to be able to be more yourself and not have to. I don't think there was a reliance on the mask. I think, as you kind of said, it was just a thing that allowed you that anonymity. But like, I'm glad that we're able to kind of be more free and open with our conversation about it. And so thank you very much for indulging me with that story, because I do appreciate it. I know that it must have been a big turning point for both yourself and Sbtrkt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, as one thing, you know, obviously I created a sort of visual persona which everyone kind of could like connects with in a way, you know, like there was an immediacy of both the fact people saw a mask and they knew the music, you know, and it worked both ways. Hear the music, you think of the mask in a sense. So kind of breaking away from that is a strange thing to do for most people, you know, when they're trying to be like, you know, we want people to know about, you know, like, and all this stuff. So in some ways I probably made it hard for myself in a sense, you know, and I found new boxes have been created as well, especially in the music industry. In a sense, people found out I was like of South Asian heritage, and suddenly the opportunities I'm offered are like ones based on that, you know, versus now based on being kind of like from a certain dance genre. You know, before they were like, you're a dance producer, and I'm like, I'm not a DJ / producer / anything. You know, I made full records, full albums with storylines, you know, throughout, and it wasn't like I was just making music for the club, and it was like, you know, reliant on some other other person's direction to kind of create where I was going next. You know, my things have always personally followed my own ideas and storyline to where I want to go to next in terms of albums. You know, I don't really follow anyone else's path in that way. So yeah, I think it made more cause for like being myself.
I would 100% agree with that. I know that there's a lot of fans in Australia excited to see you. We've got Heaps Good in both Melbourne and Adelaide, and there's a special set of shows in Brisbane at the Fortitude Music Hall with yourself, the Avalanches, Holly Humberstone, Foles, Griff. I'm curious how the live show now might have changed for yourself with that kind of change in not using the mask. Have you found that the live aspect has had any major shift at all, or is it just very similar, but it's maybe now you've got better vision of the audience, of the crowd?
Yeah, no, true. That's one thing for sure. I can actually see people. Like, I think one of the main things is like every record I've done, I've tried to evolve my live show as well. You know, the first album, it was just a 2-piece, which is myself and Sam. The second album was a 3-piece, basically myself, a guy called TK and Jimmy. At one point before that had Fabiana Palladino, who writes records with J. Paul. I don't know, she recently put something else out. She was in the band before. And then now I've kind of gone to a 4-piece. So basically I have another singer called Layla, who's like the predominant vocalist on that album, kind of singing through the set and stuff. So it's kind of grown a bit. I feel like the other two players have kind of been more of a constant since my second album to now. You know, I kind of, in some ways I'd say, you know, like Tame Impala is a band, but it's also just Kevin. It's similarly in my live show, I've kind of built a group of people who will play around me. And I feel like there's a level of confidence to experiment a bit more now. You know, I feel more confident to mess about on things, you know, or try different techniques or stuff, because I challenge myself from between each of those different eras, you know. And I feel like my band grew a bit as well, where they feel more confident to not just be like sitting and doing the least, you know, possible. They can sort of follow my direction in terms of if I go off piece and go, oh, well, look, I'm extending a song by 2 minutes. They can follow it. They're not just like totally lost in that moment. Nothing's like, you know, by the book or kind of, yeah, just following a path. But yeah, I think touring right now, I think is quite difficult, you know, because obviously especially in the UK and Europe, there's the cost of living crisis, you know, like, and I think post COVID, you know, and the pandemic, there was an element of re-engaging with fans in a sense, you know, and like making people wanting to go out to things, you know. So like, I think in a general sense, like being able to perform to people is so exciting, but it's not as simple as it used to be in a way, you know, of just going, oh, we put on sale this thing and everyone will show up in that way, you know. There's certain things which can have that magic, you know, like viral moments these days, like TikTok things will become something which is so large and impressive that, you know, tens of thousands of people will want to buy a ticket for it or something. But actually there's a level of like, what I'm trying to get at is that trying to be able to go way beyond the boundaries is something that's still something I'm very ambitious to do. But to get to that point will take some levels of changing things up. And I'm definitely like trying to experiment more with my show from now through the next year, you know, to like work out how I can be more creative in a sense and put on something even more like, what's the idea? Like kind of visual, I suppose, you know, as well as musical. That's the levels basically, but trying to marry those up also within tight budgets for touring as they are these days.
Of course.
You know, it's the hardest part, really.
I can very much respect that. Well, yeah, I know that there's a lot of Australian fans excited to see yourself and the songs from the new record, The Rat Road.
Yeah.
And also songs from the previous records. As I've said, I think you are a bit of a festival favourite here in Australia. So I think people are just excited to have you back at the core of it. I was wondering if we might be able to finish today on if there's a key festival moment maybe set in your mind that you kind of think of as your favourite set. It might have been as a punter, it might have been a Sbtrkt you attended and you just happened to see this band. Is there one band or set from a festival that kind of stands out as the one that is closest to your heart?
Oh, that's a really difficult one, isn't it? I can't. Yeah, it's hard to put a finger on. You know, there are moments I've been at festivals and something magic's kind of like happened. You know, and you feel like there's a certain energy which you can't get anywhere else. I think one of the ones that I vividly remember is going to a festival on an island once and seeing Sigur Ros playing, but actually I couldn't see them because I was like in another field, but I could actually hear it, and it was kind of this ethereal, like, emotional feeling that you could feel with, like, I could see the wind in the trees and stuff, and it had this sort of moment that reminded me there are things which sound and feel right within a certain space. I don't know, and it was just like this mad sort of on the side of a forest, basically, in Ireland, you know, and it was like it always connected with me. I don't know, like another. I have to try and remember these things, you know, like all these festivals. I don't know what another one I really enjoyed was like playing at Governor's Ball myself once, and it's in like, actually it's not Governor's Ball, it's called Bonnaroo Festival, and it's like near Nashville in Tennessee in America.
Yes.
And we once did a set, and then it had this lineup where D'Angelo came on and did this whole set with Questlove from The Roots afterwards. It was like a jam session, but he was on stage straight after we finished. And it was like, and this one stage, and his was like a secret set. And it was like this thing which just happened out of the blue, but could only have happened there. And it never happened again, you know? So that's something which kind of like, you know, is quite exciting. I think, I don't know if people in Australia remember back on my first album, I used to bring Disclosure on stage with me, and I don't know if I remember doing like Sydney Field Day Festival before they blew up, you know, and I brought them on to like do covers of their songs in my show. So I think some of these, you know, like I love those moments where you can like do things with guests which only ever happen once, you know, may never happen in another environment, you know. So yeah, kind of.
I absolutely love those. Well, yeah, those are that sound like some absolutely incredible moments. So thank you very much for sharing those with me. Aaron, aka Sbtrkt, I very much appreciate you coming onto the pod today. We're looking forward to seeing you at Heaps Good Festival, which is taking place again in Australia in January, and those shows in Brisbane as well at the Fortitude Music Hall. But yeah, thank you again for your time today.
No, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being back there.
The most powerful designer drugs are the digital ones we use daily. And we get high off them. One touch, tap, like, scroll at a time. You know, just like tech creators want us to. Use digital without digital using you. Learn more at sync.ithra.com.